Hey, what's going on, everybody? Big show today. We got Justin joining the show. We're going to talk Logan Brown being dismissed, not entering the transfer portal, kind of what that means with Jim Leonhard and how he's taking control of the moment. We got user comments for the show. Plus, we're going to get into the coaching staff itself. Who's potentially auditioning for their job next year? Not Jim Leonhard, with the rest of the coaches. We're going to talk all about all that and more in today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Locked On Badgers. I am your host, Ryan Herrings. Thank you for joining the show. If you're watching on YouTube, listening on the pod, whatever it is, I really appreciate it. We continue to build the community. Today's show is brought to you by Sling TV. Sling has something for everyone, especially when it comes to college football coverage. With a massive lineup of games across the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, and SEC, I can always watch the games I want on Sling, and now you can too. Check out Sling TV now and see the massive lineup of games they have all season long. Sling, the TV you love for the price you love. Try it today. We're going to bring Justin on the show. A lot of a bunch of different topics we want to talk about today. Let me see if I can pop up your name here, Justin. There it is. I love it. A couple of different things we're going to talk about today. This wasn't going to be the first topic I was going to talk about when it initially popped. Logan Brown entered the transfer portal was the initial news. And then it kind of evolved into, and now it's being reported, Jeff Petroikis, Evan Flood, a bunch of different places have put this out there. He didn't enter the transfer portal. Logan Brown, the former five-star offensive tackle,
kind of forced to the portal.
He was dismissed. Without getting into a ton of details, because I wasn't there, obviously, I don't have the inside knowledge, and I'm not going to speculate on things I don't know. That's not what this is about. But it sounds like from everything we've heard, cheap shot, something. Jim Leonhard called it an internal issue. From what has been put out there, and this has been put out there at this point, it was a cheap shot, kind of a fight in practice where he kind of threw an elbow. And that's kind of where we're at. I don't want to go too much further than that, but interesting to me for a couple reasons. The first is you just don't get that many five-star kids in Madison. You know, Logan Brown was one of the highest-rated recruits, for better or worse, in the history of Wisconsin football. And this is definitely not the glorious end we anticipated.
No, definitely not. When this initially broke, before more of the details came out, I was just under the impression that he had been passed up and that he felt like it was in his best interest to move somewhere else where he'd get more opportunity for playing time. I think that that's actually legitimately a case to be made for that, but
I mean, that first part definitely did happen, right? He did get passed up.
Yeah. I think you could make the remark that he was either probably of our tackles at best fourth, maybe fifth.
I'd say fourth.
Yeah, it depends on how they feel about Nolan Rucci. He's probably ahead of him. If you had to start at the beginning of the season, I might lean Nolan Rucci over if you give the guys live reps who would end up being better by the end of the season. That's neither here nor there. Looking at this, in all honesty, I love the decisive action and how quick it was made. This is a great move by Leonhard in terms of him being not sitting around on something and letting it kind of fester. I think it sends a very strong impression to the players that this type of stuff will not be tolerated between players. You know, it's one thing to have a little bit of a scuffle or smack some guy's helmet. It's another thing completely to actually strike another player.
Yeah. And
that's for the safety of everyone. You know,
but
you don't want to have that type. Yeah. You have to have some level of be able to control it. Like if you play sports there, you have to have some level of aggression and being a little bit of a hothead. You need to be able to control that.
Well, and the other part here that I kind of want to talk about is, so two things I kind of want to talk about. The first is, this is kind of one of the early, challenges is the wrong word, but this is definitely kind of a early, how are you going to handle the situation for a new head coach, right? And I think it's incredibly, like you said, decisive. And I think he owned the moment when Logan Brown kind of attempted to get ahead of this, right? By saying, I'm entering the transfer portal. I am going to continue pursuing my football opportunities elsewhere. And listen, Jim Leonhard through the team very quickly corrected that. No, this is an internal issue. He was dismissed. And I like the clear, concise communication.
Well, and it's no offense to Logan, but this is information that needs to be out there if a player is transferring. Like, this is your reputation now, for better or worse. This happened. You can come out of this and try to make good on it and be a better person going forward. But every program that may consider you as a transfer, and as we both know, not all of them do their due diligence on a player. This is now out there in the news cycle. Like, this is information that is readily available to everyone about what his future is, what happened, and why he's gone.
Yeah,
that is now clear. The details as to why it happened, they'll probably have to reach out to the program, but they now know that there was something that happened that is worth looking into.
And it's also not, like, to be really clear, like, this is not the people recover from mistakes. Like, I imagine what happened is Logan Brown is having a crappy year on the football field. Like, he expected more. He's probably frustrated. None of this is to excuse anything. I just like, I can see myself at that age. And the other thing I'd say, when you come in as a 5-star recruit, you carry a certain level of expectation that isn't your fault, right? And then when you don't reach those levels, people start asking, well, what's wrong with Logan? What's wrong with this guy? I think it probably hit a boiling point. He reacted poorly. I'm only guessing how this all went down, but yeah, like, I really like how Jim Leonhard handled it. And I also want to point out, you and I were talking before the year, and I think this is important. We talked about the depth at tackle, and we literally said before the year, now, nobody thought this is how it would happen, but we said one of these 4 or 5-star guys is transferring, period. There's too many.
I believe you or I also said that there was a chance that if Logan didn't get it together, that he was going to get passed up.
I thought he's a guard. I still think he's a guard. And
that could very well be. I look at this, and my way of kind of taking a look into this is, it stinks, and I don't want to pass judgment on him. He could be a very good kid. And I don't think anybody else should be making assumptions about him as a person, but his opportunity with Wisconsin is over. He gave 3 years to the program. Whatever it is, going forward, you got to make better decisions, learn from it, and hopefully get another opportunity. There will be somebody that will pick him up. There is talent there. It was a loaded room, and I think we can argue the level of quality that Wisconsin has going on right now. But there are plenty of teams that could use a tackle prospect that is an average starter.
Yep.
He's definitely got some physical tools.
Has his size, his length. And certainly I hope he lands on his feet. Like, I hope everyone out there learns from their mistakes and gets better. Like, Logan's not unique in that. We all need to do that. The other thing I want to talk about, kind of shift gears a little bit, because we already saw Deacon Hill leave. Paul Chryst is obviously gone. We've talked about that a bunch. Players have a window to transfer after a coach leaves. I would just put this out there. Expect a bunch more transfers. If not right now, between now and next year. Like, a bunch more players are going to transfer. That doesn't mean the locker room or the culture is broken. It's coaching transition.
Not at all. In fact, I think it really will come down to what guys feel like they have an opportunity and how they feel about Jim. Now, I don't think that it means they view him negatively, but it means that they probably came here for Chryst. And if there's going to be a shift in dynamic in the way that the coaching staff looks at things going forward. This may be more of a meritocracy going forward. That could be, like, I think Paul, for better or worse, was a very loyal guy. I think that you could make the argument that he probably didn't always give the player who had earned the most opportunity the chance.
I think he definitely tilted seniority, right? For sure.
Yes.
And again, like, to your point, for better and worse, like, a lot of the loyalty thing worked and it didn't work. Like, he was probably a little too heavy-handed with it, though. Coming up, we're going to talk about it's going to lead us into some of the coaches on the current staff. We're going to talk a little bit about which coaches are maybe auditioning for their jobs if Jim Leonhard is able to keep it. So that's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest way to spice up your college football season. Super simple to play it while you're watching games on the weekend. Easy to win cold, hard cash after a single day. No more waiting until the end of the year to get paid out. You can do it immediately. And the pick'em contest with the individual player parlays are incredible. We have it on our Discord. Mike, who's been on the show, is all over it. Last week, he hit on Mertz going over. He hit on Braylon Allen going over. So you can do individual player props which are really a lot of fun and make it a little more unique than just always having to bet the spreads of the game. Like, where is Graham Mertz going to be against this suspect Michigan State secondary? You're able to do that on Underdog. It's a lot of fun. It's a simple way to play 2 to 5 players on your parlay. And again, easy, cold, hard cash after single games. Sign up with the promo code Locked On. That's one word. Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's right. You give 100, they're going to give you 100 extra dollars for free. Go to underdogfantasy.com. Find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store, Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On. It's one word. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. I want to thank everyone again for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. Appreciate everybody who takes the time to listen. We're going to get Justin back on the show. Just keep talking Badgers here. Let's see if we can get our overlay up. Oh, that's the wrong button. For those watching on the pod, I'm trying to get my background up. Or
there
listening on the pod. There's the background. So I wanted to talk about this. I've been kicking this around in my head, Justin, for a while. Everyone talks, rightfully so, about Jim Leonhard. He's auditioning for the job, obviously. Mm-hmm. He might get it. He might not get it. The guys on the staff, right, because it's a very interesting mix of coaches, to me, always feels like some that Chryst kind of handpicked and some that JL probably had a ton of input into. I just kind of want to run down the list and get your vibe on who on the staff do you think, if Jim Leonhard keeps a job, is probably safe? Who's auditioning for their job? Who's maybe out? Let's start on the offensive side, because I think that's probably the most interesting discussion here. Bobby Ingram.
If the offense continues to play well, I think you can make a good argument for him being kept on. I think honestly, Leonhard will look at it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And if they continue to throw the ball really well and the running game improves, which I think it will if the passing game continues to be good, the offense can be really good the rest of the year. And I think that they like being able to carry that over into next year.
Let me give you my devil's advocate on Bobby Ingram a little bit. As a guy who, if you remember, we talk about many things, Badgers sports, but we both like the Bobby Ingram hire. But he was brought in as a guy who doesn't have a background as an offensive coordinator, partially because like Paul Chryst was there as his grandpa offensive coordinator, right? Like somebody that could like mentor him. I kind of feel like as good as Bobby Ingram might be the rest of the year, Leonhard's going to want an established offensive coordinator
and that could very well be. My way of looking at it is kind of the other issue is what does Leonhard view as what does he envision for the offense that he wants? And we don't know what that is. Like that could be very different than what we're running right now. It seems he's much more willing to pass the ball. There's zero doubt about that. Like every conversation we've heard him make so far has been, we need to throw more to open up for the run. So I think whatever we're going to do, it's going to come down to how he views what is the best opportunity to get our playmakers in space and what is the simplest offense.
Yeah. It could be, what you could do with Ingram too. And now I'm speculating. And again, all of this is kind of hinging on this assumption that Jim Leonhard is going to get the job. A lot of this goes out the window if he doesn't get the job. So that's kind of where we're basing these assumptions on for people listening. Bobby Ingram, maybe he becomes a tight end coach / offensive coordinator, and you bring in a quarterback guy, really, because it seems like a lot on his plate with backgrounds that he doesn't have necessarily. Sure. That's just a thought.
I'm going to go ahead and actually, I have a response for that. I don't see that happening. If the offense plays well the rest of the year and he's the offensive coordinator, I think he can parlay that into an offensive coordinator job somewhere else. And I can't see him taking a cut in pay to go to tight end coach. That's when fair. He's proven that he can run a functional offense.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's probably 100% fair. Let's go running back, Al Johnson. And this was definitely a Chryst hire.
Yeah, I don't know how much history that Leonhard has with him. I would personally, me just without knowing, just the, skin deep view of this, I would say he probably gets rid of him.
I would think so too. And I didn't preface our conversation with this, and I feel like I should. Like, I'm not here trying to root for anybody to lose jobs, but Jim Leonhard is going to be tasked with building out his staff, period.
And it's going to be guys that who does he view as the best, not who Chryst was.
There's going to be hard decisions made, and that's just the conversation we're trying to have here. And I look at Al Johnson, I just, again, it's a guy who doesn't have that background, doesn't have a lot of recruiting ties. And
that
it
was the
seems
comment
like,
I was going to make. I feel like
yeah,
running back coach is a position you can find a really dynamic recruiter without losing much on the coaching side. So I think if it's me, I would be looking for somebody young, hungry, who's a really aggressive recruiter for that position. And I'd probably say tight end coach too.
well, that's the next one. I think that, so Chris Herring, the tight end coach, who has been with Paul Chryst, who had been with Paul Chryst, I should say, since the Pittsburgh days, definitely one of his closer friends, closer coaching associates, was the special teams coach. Special teams were never really that good under his tenure, which I think is, I think, by the way, low key, because I don't want to crush Chris Herring completely. I always think the special teams thing not being good on your tenure is a little tough to completely judge a coach
It's
by.
so much luck involved with it.
It's hard to find good kickers in college. Like,
Yep.
if you just stumble on a good kicker, suddenly is the special teams coach great?
Yeah,
I don't know.
not really.
Yeah, but it is also fair to say the punt return units, the coverage units were necessarily not that good.
That's more what I was going to lean on. If your coverage units aren't great, it leans more to that.
There was the couple years we talked about it. The punt return units for Wisconsin averaged like 2.4 yards per carry. It was like 100 or per attempt. It was like 130th in the country, and you could fall forward and basically get that amount. So.
Yeah.
He moved to tight ends this year. Tight ends once again ravaged by injuries. Nothing really he can do there. But to me, I'm just gonna call. There's no way he's back on the staff next year.
Nope. I
think
agree
there's
completely.
0 chance. You know, the other part of it too. I mean, this isn't even fair to him, but I just think it'd be a really awkward thing. Being one of Chris' like closest friends, Chris was fired. I just think it's a dynamic that's not going to happen for many reasons. What about Bob Bostad?
Bob was a huge friend of Chryst. Now, he's worked hand in hand with Jimmy for several years now, and has also, is running the offensive side. I could see Leonhard being willing to keep him. I don't know if Bostad will want to stay. That's kind of what I take a look at it is. He's an older coach. He's now going to have somebody who's roughly 15, years younger than him. That's his boss. And how does he feel about that? That I have no idea. It could be he may just love being at Wisconsin. As long as, Leonhard doesn't have a problem with him, he might just be like, yeah, I'll stay.
He's one of the guys I think Leonhard would keep. I really think just because offensive line's kind of a hard spot to find a really good coach. He's had success at it. And quite frankly, I think he can be kind of that, I don't know what I can actually say on this podcast, but that kind of angry old man on the staff that can really get after people.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on if we do make massive changes to the offensive staff, how he feels about the people that are brought in too.
That's fair.
Like, he might not get along with everybody, but you never know.
Well, and a lot of that will probably hinge on the offensive coordinator decision as well. Like, just like you're saying, right?
I think that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, there's going to be two positions that I think that he's going to be most concerned with. It's going to be the tight end coach, because he's going to have a lot of those players that they're going to be intermingling with. And it's going to be the offensive coordinator.
And again, I think the fascinating part with this is all these coaches now, there's a fire under everybody, right? People are so focused on Jim Leonhard and the head coaching spot for obvious reasons. But listen, this is Ingram's chance to show he can run an offense, whether it's here or somewhere else. Like, it's going to be all laid out there. This is, Al Johnson's chance at this Division I coaching job. What can he get out of these running backs? How, can he get an endorsement out of them? Can he land another? Well, we have 2 commits already, but I just think it's very interesting to see how all these coaches are going to coach with that pressure. What about Elvis Whitted, receivers coach?
I think he would be the guy that I would be most focused on. I think he's done an excellent job in terms of the talent that he's found there. And I also think that he's actually a pretty darn good coach, because if you look at it now, we've got a bunch of young guys who have been pushing for playing time and have produced when they've gotten on the field.
Yeah. They look great, quite frankly. Outside of Skylar Bell alligatoring that pass in between defensive backs, go up and get it, bud. Aside from that, their young running backs, our receivers look great. I think the recruiting's been really good. We saw Vinny Anthony on the field break like 4 tackles on his first jet sweep. Like, I think the talent at that spot is really good. Landing Keontae Lewis from UCLA, obviously he played a big part in that. Yeah, as long as there's not some weird personality thing that obviously we wouldn't know, with Whitted and Leonhard, and maybe Whitted as loyalty somewhere to Chris, whatever it is. Aside from that, I would think he's a slam dunk to stay, because you just don't get a bunch of guys like Skylar Bell, Marcus Allen, Keontae Lewis, Chimere Dike at Wisconsin. Yeah. All right, let's go defensive line. And this will be a little quicker because I think this one's a little easier. But let's start at a couple that I think are maybe, I don't know. What about Ross Kalaji on the defensive line?
I think there's probably a past relationship there between him and and Leonhard. I'd be kind of shocked if he left. And I actually think he's done a pretty good job with the defensive line.
I'm disappointed in their development this year, right?
I am.
I thought they would be better this year, and I thought the upperclassmen with Mullins, Johnson, James Thompson, it doesn't feel like they've really gotten a lot better.
I thought some of those guys played pretty well in the last game.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of youth there, a lot of guys that are getting their first extended reps. So I don't put it like in Benton. I mean, we can say that we wanted more from him, but he's been really disruptive in 4 out of the 6 games they've played. He wasn't against Ohio State, and he wasn't great against Washington State, although he did have flashes there.
The thing with Benton that's funny, man, is I think he's been more disruptive than I thought, but I think he's been a little worse against the run for whatever reason.
He's got 2 sacks already. He could end up with a 4 or 5.
Second on the team in pressures. Like, he's been really disruptive as a pass rusher, so that's a great point on your end. What about D'Onofrio? Mark D'Onofrio.
I'll be shocked if he's back. I think he was not to be insensitive here, but I think he was a retread that we had to fill the position with, and it was late in the season.
I like the defensive coordinator background, but I agree with you. I think it's probably, and quite frankly, the inside linebackers haven't looked good.
Yeah, they haven't. I think that's another position that I think if you're going to attack for somebody young and hungry, I don't think that's a bad spot. I think it's going to help that I think you and I both agree Bobby April's probably going to be the defensive coordinator next year.
Yeah,
I'd be quite honestly shocked if he's not.
Assuming Leonhard gets the job. Yeah, I think that's the obvious transition. Well, let's go there. Let's go April. Obviously, we both think defensive coordinator staying on the staff.
Yeah, and I think it's overdue. Like we're lucky we held on to him. I'm shocked that some lower program didn't grab him as a defensive coordinator.
Well, I don't think a lower program could pull him away from us as well. That's a great question.
It's an opportunity to be defensive coordinator.
It would definitely depend on what that lower program is, right?
Yes, very true.
That's fair.
Poteet is going to be an interesting one, to be quite honest to me. Like,
one more
there's a couple of factors.
April, really quick before we go to Poteet, I just want to point out the other thing with April that dude is one of the best recruiters on staff. On a staff without a ton of recruiting juice, quite frankly, Bobby April gets after it.
He's probably our best recruiter, quite frankly.
Yeah, people may not know this because we actually talked about this on the BuckyCast, the previous podcast that I was on, you were on. But we did an interview. Oh, the name is escaping me. It's going to kill me. But with the walk-on linebacker from Washington that committed to Wisconsin for 4 months, then he flipped back to Washington. Great interview, great kid. The amount of work Bobby April put into landing a walk-on linebacker from across the country, like individual workouts, going over his film, dedicating time to him. Bobby April is the best recruiter on this staff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into Poteet. I think Poteet's interesting.
I think that he's a Chryst guy. I don't know how much. I think we can argue he's been solid as a coach this year, but I think that there's also the factor. It also depends on how badly Leonhard wants his son.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
That's a factor in it because if you cut him loose, the son's not coming here. There's a solid chance that he does now, and it's a 4-star cornerback that you potentially are bringing in.
I actually felt like this might be more of a Leonhard guy. I kind of feel like out of any hire,
I don't know, because didn't Chryst have some ties to him?
I think so, but out of any hire, wouldn't Leonhard have the most input on a cornerbacks coach?
Quite possibly, yeah.
I think it's.
I don't know. I mean, it's speculation. Guy. I don't know what prior relationship they had because he was an NFL player, and it's possible that Leonhard ran into him a little bit.
I think he stays. I really do. I think he stays.
I think so too. I just think that there's an argument that could be made that if he wasn't a Leonhard hire, that I could see him being like, hey, I got this other guy that I like.
Well, listen, there's no shortage to bolster your point there. There's going to be no shortage of qualified defensive back type coaches that Jim Leonhard is going to have connections to.
Oh yeah,
right out of anything.
We can argue the recruiting ability of the guys that he can bring in, but if you think there's somebody that could pull in NFL guys, Leonhard could pull in NFL guys.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to see what he does with the staff, and that's really the staff there. So. Again, a lot of this is projection. A lot of this is, Jim Leonhard has to get the job for this conversation to even come true. But I think we're on the same spot in a lot of this. Bobby Ingram, obviously, and this is what I'm most excited about pulling out of this is just seeing what Bobby Ingram does, knowing that he's auditioning for a job just like Jim Leonhard is, and I'm very excited to see where that goes. Coming up next, we got user comments. We're going to get into it all on Locked On Badgers. All right, everyone. I appreciate you tuning in to Locked On Badgers. We've got Justin on the show. As always, we try to get user comments in. It's been kind of busy and hectic the last couple of weeks, so we haven't got a ton of them, and I can't get to all of them now either. So I'm going to stop talking and get to as many as we can in the time we have left. As always, we've talked about this before. I have a 200-character limit on our streaming platform here, so I have to truncate some of your stuff. So if you see a comment and it's not the full thing, that's why. I'm not trying to paint anybody in any type of context missing anything here. So let's get right into it. Lee Herschel, who's had a lot of comments on the show. This is based off the basketball show we did. Both Connor and Chucky, Connor Essigen and Chucky Hepburn are mature beyond their ears. Essigen, auto offense that needs to add bulk to excel in D. It'll be hard to keep him off the court. Justin, you and I, listen, we are Connor Essigen truthers. We've been on that boat for a long time. It's nice to see other people jumping on board. What do you think of Lee's comment here?
I completely agree with it. I think this year we will see some up and downs with the defensive side with Connor, but he's a guy, and I there's such a polarizing view that I kind of have on him. He's a guy who I think could be in and out of the lineup all season long, and I think they'll have times where he gets hot. He can also be a guy by the end of the season, if he shoots the way I think he's capable of, he could be their best offensive player by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's got that kind of scoring ability shooting the basketball. And his biggest shortcoming is just going to be that he needs to get stronger.
Yeah, which that's true for most freshmen, by the way. Most freshman wings need to get stronger. Most freshman guards need to get stronger.
He is going to push the guys that are in front of him. I have no doubt about that. We talked about Johnny being a killer last year.
Yeah.
I think Connor's a total assassin.
You know what he might be this year for us? And this is a really valuable thing that we certainly didn't have last year. He might be a guy coming off the bench as a microwave. Yep. You know, come off the bench, get 9 points
suddenly
in the first half on 3 threes.
Yeah.
And really just change the dynamic of a game in 15 minutes.
Bring energy where we're flat or whatever.
Him and Kamari McGee, I think they can both come off the bench with just.
That's between those two. That's a lot of energy to put out on the floor at once.
I can't wait to watch it. It's not going to be the biggest defensive backcourt if those two are together, but I think they're going to score.
We'll see it. He could end up pushing for a starter yet.
It'll be interesting for sure. I mean, I think Klesmit's got the starter spot, and I think the 3 is probably Jordan Davis.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's got an outside shot at the 3. If guard is concerned with scoring, there's a chance that he could be put out there at the 3. Because I think out of those two, I feel much more comfortable with Connor putting up points. It depends on if you're willing to let the defense slide a little bit.
That's going to be a tough matchup for him in a freshman year as the 3.
It is, especially as a 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be shocking to see them go small backcourt.
I could see them go small. It would have to be certain lineups, in my opinion.
It's going to
thank you so much for the comment. Man, let's keep going. I didn't put who had this comment in there, but talking about Michigan State, expect to be a matchup of maybe top 20, top 15 teams. And now it's just 2 teams trying to salvage their season to make a bowl game. The reason I wanted to put this comment up is I was talking to the Michigan State guy, and Wisconsin, honestly, it feels like all of the energy is now shifted in a positive momentum with Jim Leonhard. And it no longer feels like we're just desperately trying to salvage a bowl.
And with Michigan State, it feels like it's going the opposite direction.
Yeah, the energies feel very different, even though this comment on the surface is very correct. Both teams are trying to kind of salvage the season.
Yeah, I was not as high on Michigan State as a lot of people were. I felt it was going to be a winnable game for Wisconsin this year because, quite frankly, they really relied on Walker last year to bust some plays and to keep them in games. And he was electric, but they lost him. The offensive line wasn't particularly great, and we know their defensive shortcomings coming off of last year. I think that people underestimated how big of a rebuild Michigan State was actually in for. There was the recruiting classes in D'Antonio's last couple of years weren't great, and there's been a ton of transfers out of Michigan State. So I don't think it's fair for it. I feel bad because that coaching staff is taking so much heat. And the reality is it's like, this is a dumpster fire that we're trying rapidly to put out. And you guys are expecting, because we had a big year last year, for this to suddenly turn overnight. And that it's just, the talent isn't there.
Yeah, it's not there. Wisconsin's a more talented team.
Yeah.
And I think they go up there this weekend and win. I forgot, I didn't put who made this comment, so I apologize for that. This one is from D Nutter. Again, I couldn't put the whole thing in there, but this was in response to, I had a take, and Justin, I'm curious on where you're at of this. I had a take that Wisconsin doesn't necessarily need to be hiring coaches who haven't coached those positions before. And D here's pushing back a little bit, saying a good coach is a good coach. It's a red herring. Bob Bosa was a good inside linebackers coach, a good outside linebackers coach, good offensive line coach. You know what? My point on this, and then I'll kick it over to you, Justin, is always. I'm not saying you can hire a coach who's never coached that position. He can't succeed. What I'm saying is at Wisconsin, you don't have to take that risk. You can go get a guy who can coach running backs. You can coach tight ends.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the point I was just about to make. Do you want somebody who's a podiatrist to be your open heart surgeon?
He might do great.
Like, he might be an awesome podiatrist, but it's probably going to take him some time to learn how to do that other job correctly and well. Like, there are certain things when it comes to offensive line. A really good offensive line coach knows what he's looking at. He's breaking down film. He sees things that a player's doing. He's done it before himself. So he understands what's going through that player's mind. Those are the type of things that are second nature that you have after a period of time coaching a position. Now, he could very well be a very high-level coach down the road, but at a place like Wisconsin, you don't have to wait for that. You can get the guy who's just already good at the job. A running back coach at Wisconsin, you can get it. You could realistically, they could have gone out and got somebody who's just an absolutely electric recruiter, who's a young coach that has a year or two at running back somewhere else and already has this kind of legs under him a little bit.
I agree.
You could do the same thing with tight ends that we're talking about there too.
Yeah. And to go into an off season where you're trying to fix the offense and you put 3 or 4 guys in spots they've never coached.
We're kind of learning on the run. Yeah, it's a bad idea.
And we called that. It's not a recipe for success, and you don't have to take those risks at Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. I do appreciate the comment, man. I kind of disagree on this one though, but definitely wanted to throw it up there because disagreements are good. It helps us.
Both the difference is Bosa is also a top 5 offensive line coach. You're shifting him, and he was a linebacker, so it's not like he was learning a brand new position.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do appreciate the comment, though. Again, we're here for all disagreements. Disagreements make us smarter. So if you disagree, let me know. We'll throw it up there. We'll talk about it. A couple more comments quick. We're going to wrap up the show. This is from No Supervision. I couldn't get the whole name in there. He said, I'd like to slide back into the comments. I love it when people slide back into my DMs here. Throw out a quick preseason guest reminder. Mertz is currently on track for 30 touchdowns this year. Best player on this field this season. And there was more comments here. I couldn't get it all in. But Justin, you brought this up too, with Mertz potentially being able to hit 30 touchdowns this year. I had someone else tell me that they thought Mertz was the best player on offense this year. Yeah, like he's been incredible for the Badgers. Yeah. Like,
he's been good. Listen, I threw this out to Ryan offline in a question as a kind of quizzed him, and I said,
I got it wrong.
Who do you think is number 2 in the Big Ten in touchdown passes right now? It's Graham Mertz.
Yeah,
and the closest guy has 2 less than him.
That's wild.
So here's what I want to say about this. He does have a good shot at 30, to be quite honest, if the passing continues to be ramped up. Their schedule isn't significantly more difficult. There's going to be a couple of tough games. He's going to, the games at Iowa and Maryland are going to be interesting. Same with Minnesota, because I think those teams can all 3. Well, Maryland, not so much. Minnesota can hold on to the football, which is probably going to depress his stats a little bit.
And Iowa can play D.
And Iowa can play defense. I think we will see the offense be good going forward. None of the secondaries on any of the teams that they have coming up really truly scare me. I think that Wisconsin's going to be able to pass on everybody they play the rest of the season. The question is against is Iowa's pass rush going to get home on them? Mm-hmm. And the running game, because Wisconsin has a chance here to be, I guess the best comparison, if we're looking at the Big Ten, would probably be to Michigan. Like, they have a chance to be that type of offense going forward if things click. Like, you have a very good run game. If the offensive line gets its act together, and I think we will get there, that we just don't have very balanced, and they'll just win whatever way they can. Yes.
Well, I was going to say, we just don't have the mobility of
Mertz is not a Jay McCarthy. Yeah.
But he's more mobile than people think.
And he can make all the throws. The thing with Mertz was never his ability to throw the football. It was, do you know where you should be going with it?
You know what's wild, man? If you went time traveled 7 months ago and said Mertz is maybe the second best statistical quarterback in the conference, maybe top 4 overall, and the Badgers are terrible and fired their coach, your mind would explode. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I look at it, and you look at QBR, and you look at him by comparison to somebody like Tanner Morgan, who he has 6 more touchdown passes than. Mm-hmm. And it's like
taking more shots down the field.
Yeah, it's like honestly, the only people that are taking Morgan over him are Minnesota fans.
Yeah.
Like statistically, it's not close.
Secretly, some of them wouldn't. I'm just saying that in deep down in spots they want to, they want to admit exist.
Well, it does help that Wisconsin has better wide receivers, and yeah, that's shots fired to PJ Fleck and his amazing wide receiver abilities.
They absolutely do. Let's get a couple more comments in quick. We're going to finish this up. Again, I apologize for all the comments I didn't get to. I got hundreds of comments on YouTube. I just can't get them all here, but we're going to continue to try to get them. This is just from Pato. I just kind of want to throw up there because I think we all agree with this. I'm more excited to watch Wisconsin than I've been in a while. Northwestern isn't good, obviously. The point we were making earlier. But with PC being conservative, we would have gotten our 14-point lead and started chewing clock. Mm-hmm. And again, this is kind of what we talked about after that game. Like, don't make this into the Super Bowl. We didn't beat the Broncos but
it was a shift in mindset.
But it's a shift in mindset. We played differently, and that can carry forward. We're going to finish that just because we are running out of time here. We're going to finish with, and a bunch of comments I didn't get to, guys. I'm sorry. We'll do another fuller comment show. I'll try to get to a bunch of them to make sure you guys get into it. I want to finish off with our resident pessimist here, Akefo. He says, he drink a tall glass of bright red Kool-Aid. He has Wisconsin winning by 2. Which, listen, if he has Wisconsin winning, that means times are going pretty well.
I'm going to say this. If Michigan State's defensive secondary is as bad as it's looked, Wisconsin's scoring a lot more than 23 points. They're just Michigan State's defense is not that good. It's just not.
Only caveat to that, I would say, Big Ten games on the road. Things can be kind of weird on the road. We've seen that play out.
They can. And I just think this is a defense that's on par with what we just saw at Northwestern.
Oh, they're terrible. They're really bad, and
they do have a better chance of offensively holding onto the football and doing some things. I just don't think they're not particularly strong in the offensive line, and Thorne's a little dinged up, so it will be interesting to see how we play defensively against them.
Yeah, how much of his game? And I was talking to the Michigan State guy. How much of his game was being able to play action off Kenneth Walker, which isn't there anymore?
A whole lot.
Yeah, and
but it's not even just that. I actually like Thorne as a quarterback. I don't think he's a bad player at all. I really think they just are. The offensive line wasn't good last year, but I think it's better than it is this year. The other part of this I want to make is people have really bagged on Wisconsin's defense this year. Wisconsin's defense is not bad. When you look at it in the landscape of college football, Wisconsin's defense is still a good defense. It's just not a elite dominating defense. They're closer to 25 than they are to 5, which is actually a pretty significant gap.
It's just the expectations have been so high that we are spoiled. Quite frankly, we're just spoiled defensively.
We definitely are.
And that Ohio State game puts such a bad taste in your mouth.
It did.
If you could just kind of
that was their floor. That was as bad as this defense could possibly.
Yeah, we that was also the low point, kind of in the very rock bottom of where this program is under Chryst.
Yeah.
And
look at it this way: Wisconsin's defense was better against Washington State than virtually every Pac-12 team they played against.
Yeah, I think your point's really good. Wisconsin has a good defense. They just don't have a great defense this year. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. If you pair that with a good offense, you're going to win quite a few games. Mm-hmm. We're going to finish there because we already kept Justin kind of a little longer than I normally do. I do appreciate him jumping on. This was a last-minute request on my end. Literally gave him 7 minutes to shower and wake up. I think he was sleeping on the couch. No, I do appreciate everybody tuning in. Big game this weekend coming up. We're obviously going to talk about it after Go Live like we always do. Join the reaction show on Wisconsin, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow.